Speaking to the dead, or at least attempting to, is an act that's been around since the dawn of time. Those not being able to move past their loss, or those who wish to cross the thin veil of this life and the next. But somehow a necromancy tool would become a best-selling children's toy and a pop culture symbol today, with a backstory just as mysterious as its use. This is the complete history of the Ouija board. Now, believe it or not, the Ouija or Ouija board, you can say either, was originally just a fun pastime. It was never seen as anything demonic, evil, or nefarious by any means at all. That was up until horror pop culture and people blaming murders on it, which we will get into later in the video. But first, to start this conversation around Ouija boards and spirit boards, we must take a look at automatic writing. If you've ever seen people channel spirits writing down on pen and paper and it looks like a bunch of odd scribbles, then you yourself have seen automatic writing. If you've ever seen anything involving the psychic twins, then you've definitely seen it. It's the idea that a spirit is using the writing tool and sometimes the person as a conduit for communication. This takes us to China in the Ming Dynasty, where Fuji, or known as planchette writing, was created. In this form of divination, the user guides a stick, writing Chinese characters in sand or the ashes of incense. This was just one of the first few means of communication with the dead that's documented, but I believe it important to discuss due to the whole nature of planchette writing and how a planchette is a focal part of the Ouija board. Now, spirit boards are not a new phenomena before our aforementioned name brand we're discussing today, because in the 19th century in America, there's something called the spiritualist movement happening. This was just a few years behind Europe, but it took like wildfire in America, and it's based on two simple things. One, that after death, the person is still in the state of existence and can be contacted by the living, and that the afterlife is a place where the spirits keep evolving and interacting. So why not open the door for them to just come through? And I think this was really easy to overtake in America because it follows Christian dogma. You would have a seance on Saturday night and have no conflicting thoughts or feelings about going to church in the morning. It was absolutely, completely normal, commonplace to people to have seances and automatic writing and have table turning parties, in which participants would place their hands on a small table and watch it begin to shake and rattle. Following the Civil War, psychic businesses boomed with this thought of people being able to easily contact their lost relatives, and this led to instant gratification for these grief-stricken people, and this would lead to us needing innovation. It was not convenient to go pay and see a psychic and try to book in, or have all your friends show up, hold hands, light candles, and try to do this whole seance situation. This needed instant gratification, it needed innovation, it needed this Zoom call or the FaceTime of the dead. We could not be holding seances every night. In 1886, the fledgling Associated Press reported a new phenomenon taking over the spiritualist camps in Ohio: the talking board. It was at its very core a Ouija board, it just didn't have its name attached yet. It had letters and numbers and used a planchette-esque device to point to them, and it was wide-spreading and very quickly. According to Robert Murch, the frontrunner and lead historian of Ouija and talking boards, who we quite literally would not have almost any of the information we have about Ouija without him and the entire association surrounding the preservation and history of Ouija boards, so shout out to them, absolutely. It was one of the four investors, Elijah Bond, an attorney's sister-in-law, Helen Peters, who's considered a strong medium, who was the one who named the now famous board. The story goes that they were all sitting around the board asking it what its name should be, and it spelled out Ouija, and then they asked what that meant, and it just went to good luck. Odd and puzzling, but Peters did acknowledge herself was wearing a locket with a photo of a woman with the name Ouija above her head, which, makes it a lot less odd and puzzling. That's at least the story that came from the Ouija founders' written letters. It's very possible that the woman in the locket was famous author and popular women's rights activist Buddha, whom Peters admired, and that Ouija was just a misreading of that. So they now had their own branded spirit board as Ouija, so they went down to the patent office, and they had one thing they had to do to actually get a patent. They had to prove that the Ouija board worked. So they brought down Helen, their psychic medium, with him, and the patent guy said, "There's one thing you must do to me. You must be able to tell me what my name is from this board." So they sat there, and the Ouija board successfully spelled out this patent officer's name that was unknown to Helen. Keyword is I said it was unknown to Helen. Whether or not it was a mystical spirit or the fact that Bond A patent attorney himself may have just known the man's name. Well, that's between the spirits and them. But on February 10th, 1891, a visibly shaken patent officer awarded Bond a patent for his new toy or game, the Ouija board. Now, believe it or not, the first patent office actually didn't require them to explain everything, so the Ouija board was kind of made and put out with absolutely no direction, no instructions, no rules, or just even a how to use guide. And I think even if it was conscious or unconscious, the ambiguity and mystery aspect of this board, that who knows how it works, but it absolutely works, was a great selling point for the Ouija board, whether they ever meant it or not. Now, as I just said, they didn't really have any rules, and now if you buy one, it has a manual, but there are a few traditions or so-called rules that have been created as a whole for people that play the board. So let's go through a few, and with that, play Ouija boards at your own risk. You will meet plenty of people that say they're real and plenty of people that don't. Do your own information. Do as you will, but let's get into it. I'll start with myself, that I myself as a child, because I have not played one in years, because frankly no one wants to play one with me. When we used to play, we had to go in a circle clockwise 3 times to open the board to get the spirits warmed up, and that we would also do it the opposite way, closing, which I think people say is like starting and closing a circle in that pagan magic way, but we always did that. And of course you have to say goodbye, and you must be wary of the Ouija board demon Zozo, which we will fully be getting into that fictitious tale at the end. But there really is just absolutely so much conflicting information on how to play a Ouija board when you look online and even in manuals themselves. Some say never play alone, or that you can play alone, never light candles, or actually you should light black candles because they'll keep negativity away. I saw a ton of people saying, never play in your house, or never don't play in your house. So, it seems like, once again, something that was put into the universe with no explanation on how to do anything. It takes legs of its own, and everyone knows what's right and what's wrong, and we come into this, weird slew of a mess. But that same exact year they would get that patent in 1891, the first few advertisements started appearing in papers. Ouija, the wonderful talking board, and it took off. By the next year in 1892, the Kenner Novelty Company went from 1 factory in Baltimore to 2 in Baltimore, 2 in New York, 2 in Chicago, and 1 in London. And that following year, 2 of our main original 4 founders, Kennard and Bond, were both completely out, citing that money changed people and things involving the company. So now we are down 2 founding members. Around this time, a man, William Fuld, who'd gotten in on the company as an employee and stockholder, was running the said Ouija company. In 1898, with the blessing of Bowie, the majority shareholder, and one of the only 2 remaining original investors, he licensed the exclusive rights to make the product. After this was just absolutely booming years of business for William, and of course public frustration from the original founders, who actually took to the paper to call the drama. To be fair, William now owned the company, was the only one producing said branded Ouija board, but he was going around saying he founded the Ouija board, which technically didn't. But they took to the papers complaining about him, and even tried starting up their own rival boards that absolutely went nowhere. In 1919, Bowie sold the remaining business interests of Ouija to William for $1, less than the cost of the board itself. And this whole general idea of spirit boards was just spreading. Of course, Ouija has always been the forefront, always will be the forefront, but there were plenty of people who got absolutely interested into this, and one person in particular was actually the renowned occultist Aleister Crowley. He was very fond of the usage of the Ouija board, to the point that this same year, in 1990, he was attempting to create and produce his own, which unfortunately never came to fruition. But can you imagine how insane and trivial a Ouija board would have been from Aleister Crowley? He would have been like, you have to call coroners, you have to make the circle, you need 3 people doing it in the middle, you need a cup of cat blood that you have to make a guy drink and then he dies, because Aleister Crowley did make a guy drink a cup of cat blood, and that guy died from it. But that's besides the point. We're talking Ouija. The board's immediate success, and now more than 120 years later standing legacy, showed that it had tapped into a perfectly odd niche place in American culture. It was advertised as a conduit to speak to the dead, but also a family-friendly, fun pastime for kids. It was literally like, go play with marbles or go play with the Ouija board. Leave me be. But then there were other people who, someone went off to war and died and would run and get one and go home to try to speak to their dead husband as quickly as they could. It exists in this in-between of existence that is just absolutely perfect for this time in America. This actually led to the biggest hater of the Ouija board to be spiritualist mediums, because the middleman to the afterlife is essentially completely cut out now. Why pay for a medium or to come host a seance at your home if you could just talk to the dead yourself? You can walk down to the store for, at this time, probably like $3 and just do it at home yourself. There was no reason to have psychics around. Robert put it perfectly: people want to believe. The need to believe that something else is out there is powerful. This thing is one of those things that allows them to express that belief. And it wasn't just sunshine and rainbows before the later horror implication of the Ouija board. There's always been people denouncing it as, evil place. And of course, what is there better than something that says explicitly this is a spiritual force and it is technically legally recognized as such, than something you can blame a murder on? Now, believe it or not, there have been a slew of murders tied to Ouija boards, and that Ouija boards told them to do it, but the earliest one on record can find is from 1930, and it is about a very scandalous love triangle. In March of 1930, Clothide Marchard, the wife of a New York sculptor, Henry Marchard, answered a knock on her door, where she was met with a hammer to the skull. And when the blows didn't prove fatal, she had a chloroform-soaked rag shoved down her throat. Now, why the hell would this happen? Somewhere else, just a little bit before this attack took place on Clothide, there are two women sitting across from each other with their fingers on a planchette sitting on a Ouija board. A tribal spiritualist, Nancy, and Clothide's close friend, Lila. But it wasn't mystic spirits from beyond the grave or even her dead husband telling Nancy that Clothide's the one that did it. It was Lila. Lila said her friend Clothide killed Nancy's husband. Why? For the simple fact that Lila was having an affair with Clothide's husband, Henry. Using the board to manipulate her friend to murder, using the fresh trauma of her husband's murder, she believed she could remove the obstacle to win Henry's heart, his wife. Lila's plot didn't go quite as intended. During the trial, after which Lila and Nancy would both go free, Henry would testify that he had too many lovers to count. Henry would go on to testify that he had too many lovers to count, and after this, would go on to marry his dead wife's 18-year-old niece. Wish the Ouija board would have told you that, huh? Lila would go on to be acquitted completely, and Nancy would only serve a single year for manslaughter. These women quite literally murdered a completely innocent woman who didn't know her friend was sleeping with her husband, and they had to face no consequences about it at all. Back to believing. With wanting to just believe in something, it makes complete sense that Ouija board sales skyrocket after horrible events take place. After the devastations of World War I and the full swing of Prohibition and the early approaching Great Depression, you couldn't keep Ouija boards on the shelf, to the point that during the Great Depression, the Fold Company opened new factories to meet demands for the boards. Over 5 months in 1944, a single department store in New York sold 50,000 Ouija boards. I don't think you can really objectively, because I really can't, and I'm trying to, 50,000 boards. The thought of wanting to have an answer is one of the most human needs, especially for things that are uncertain, like existence, what's gonna happen, just everything surrounding that. It makes so much sense to have a tool of reassurance. Some people nowadays will pick up prayer beads, but at this time people were picking up Ouija boards because these were seen as factual devices. In 1967, the year after Parker Brothers bought the game from the Fold Company, 2 million boards were sold, outselling Monopoly. That same year, Americans saw more troops sent to fight in Vietnam, the counterculture of the hippie summer of love in San Francisco, and race riots in New York, Detroit, Minneapolis, and Milwaukee. There's a desperate desire for some sort of higher being affirmations that the Ouija was easy to provide. And as I've mentioned and touched on throughout this entire video about how Ouija for decades and years was just seen as a goofy little pastime, it started losing its kind of, mystical entity where people were like, it's a gag game you play. Like in I Love Lucy hosting a little fake funny seance where her and her husband, who I can't remember his name, are like tricking each other that, the psychic's real and stuff. Like it became very goofy to have a Ouija and play with it. But obviously, as you know now, that connotation absolutely changed. So what happened? What made the Ouija board a conduit of evil and necromancy and a way to touch Satan himself? there is one easy thing to point to, and it is painstakingly clear that it is William Peter Blatty's The Exorcist. If you've not seen the film The Exorcist, go watch it, but a demon named Pazuzu possesses a young girl named Reagan after playing with a Ouija board. And this, I don't think anyone would ever anticipate the absolute cultural shift in spirit boards, talking boards, even occultism as a whole that The Exorcist held onto the nation. This was almost an overnight flip on the entire situation as a whole. If you saw my Exorcist video that, doesn't exist anymore, then you know it was the second highest box office grossing film. The Exorcist was so widespread as a film, and even people that didn't see it talking to each other. So individuals seeing the evil surrounding a Ouija board know no bounds. It started making regular constant appearances in horror media and had religious groups denouncing the use of it as a tool of the devil. The same people who, say a decade ago, would go to their friends' houses, hold hands, chanting and begging for the dead to contact them. But what is any sort of religion without hypocrisy? Parker Brothers, and later Hasbro after they acquired Parker Brothers in 1991, still sold hundreds and thousands of them, but the reason people were buying them had changed drastically. Ouija boards were now scary rather than spiritual, with an edge of possible danger, but they've definitely come to embrace their spooky identity. The board has completely adapted with this identity, even going on to do that official Ouija board branded movie, which I didn't watch, but it seems like it's like fine. And they even do all these, branded boards. They did an Exorcist branded board. Like, the Ouija board knows what it is, and it kind of just rocks with it, because what else can you do? Because guess what? The sales didn't dip that much. It just shifted audience. But let's just say the Ouija board is evil. It is a conduit to demons and the devil and hell itself. But what if a demon would come through that isn't Pazuzu, but Ouija's own self-quoted demon, Zozo? If you're an avid fan of the trash reality television program Ghost Adventures, like I am, then you are absolutely familiar with Zozo, as they have a very infamous episode revolving it, but if you don't, here's a quick breakdown. Zozo is a demon that you will contact through the board, attempting to possess you. You'll know it's him if the planchette begins to do constant infinity loops or side-to-side arches, even beginning to spell out Zozo, or one of its aliases, Zaza, Mama, Oz, Zo, Za, and Abacus. You'll find countless stories of people having horrid interactions with the demon. Some even like to claim that the John Doe that inspired the Exorcist film as a whole, because it is based off of real case, was that demon was actually Zozo, which is absolutely not the case at all. This all comes down to one thing. Zozo was an urban legend that circulated online in 2009. He's no Babylon ancient demon. The name was never seen until the 19th century in the book Le Dictionnaire Infernal, which is essentially an unholy guide to demons. It's like a knockoff Key of Solomon, if you really want to get into it, with a bunch of little wacky demon guys in it. In this, demons are presented as a very real threat. Demons, but not Zozo. Zozo is the name for a habitual liar who pretends to be possessed, who after a few grifts of using this, is then thrown into jail. The first ever usage of the name Zozo in term with demonology is about someone lying about being possessed. Coincidence? I'm no. Even so, around 2009, this urban legend started taking the rounds online because a man named Darren Evans posted on the site True Ghost Tales. Here he warned of the dangers of the Ouija board, claiming to have been harassed by the demon Zozo, an evil demon from the dawn of time who has always been in the shadows and only comes to you through the Ouija board that you summon. Can you tell I don't believe any of this? I'm obviously one that's very open to spiritualism, occultism, ghosts, demons, all the things. Listen, I'll hear you out. Zozo, I will not hear you out about. Zozo's not real. I don't care if you talk to Zozo. Zozo ate your mama. You can put it in the comments, because I know people are going to be in the comments and be like, I saw Zozo. He was real. He punched me in the head and, stole $20 from me. I don't care. He's not real, bro. Evan's story has varied greatly over time. In some accounts, he first encountered the demon after finding a Ouija board with the name Zozo engraved on the back. Other times it was written on the front of the Ouija board where Ouija normally would be. In any case, his tale of demonic annoyance gained notoriety, spawning people telling their own Zozo stories and leading to the infamous Zozo episode of Ghost Adventures featuring Darren himself, where there is this weird scene where I think it's his ex-wife or it is his wife come back with like her pants unzipped and she's like really delirious, and then they're like implying Zozo's like a demon that would do something like that, and it's a wacky episode. Please go watch that episode if you have access to Ghost Adventures. Obviously, to this day, the Ouija board is still around, and I think you can even get like a Five Below Ouija board at this point. Once again, it has kind of transcended full circle into being a bit goofy again, but now does have this very real connotation. And like I stated, it skyrockets in sales in uncertain times, and the last time this video was put out was October? I want to say in October, and people who are a part of the Talking Board Society, shout out Talking Board Society if you see this again, they actually commented and confirmed with my suspicion that the sales of talking boards, spirit boards, and Ouija boards has risen. We are living in violently uncertain times. It was already really uncertain because last time I did this video, the election hadn't happened, so I think the sale of Ouija boards, if I could somehow buy stock in Ouija, I would, because I think it is absolutely skyrocketing. People are turning to answers, religion, things like that at a higher rate than they have in a long time. So, will you get a Ouija board? Will you play with a Ouija board? Will you say hi to Zozo for me? Let me know down below. And if you made it all the way to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. I think like 50% people that don't watch, I think 50% people that watch my videos aren't subscribed. Subscribe, goddammit. Thanks, please. Awesome, cool. Did you see this video the first go around, or is this your first experience of me recanting, sorry, people hate when I say that, recanting you. Regaling? No, it is regaling. Me regaling. Is this your first time seeing this? First time seeing me talk about Ouija? Let me know down below. If it's your first time or your second time, let me know. I can't talk anymore. I'm literally going on a plane to Europe in 3 hours. My friend is sleeping on the couch. That is also why I'm being like very like low talking, almost ASMR, is because I'm trying not to wake up the baby. So with that, once again, as just mentioned, I'm gonna be in Europe. I pre-recorded 3 videos. Maybe they'll come out at an okay time. Maybe they won't. Complain about it down below as well. With that, follow me on all social media platforms under Darby Valentine. I will be posting all the cool stuff I'm doing in Europe, because I am doing a lot of gross, weird, dead, occult bodies, things like that. Me stuff. So go check out what I'm doing on social media. I'll see you next time. Once again, thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you like this video, maybe like my video about the complete guide to Satanism. I will see you later. Bye.